Fantastic. This is Josh Hollander, and I'm pleased today on this episode of the InsurTech Leadership Podcast to be joined by Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts and a behavioral scientist who spent 15 years in academia before moving into consulting. His firm works with leadership teams on why AI programs stall, and the New York Times called him the Office Whisperer. His new book from Georgetown University Press, The Psychology of AI Adoption at Work, comes out in September and draws on more than 100 consulting projects and over 50 executive interviews. Welcome, Dr. Gleb.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here, and congrats on the book.
Thank you.
So I think you reached out to me because you had seen another episode I had run with Stan Smith, who's the CEO at Gradient AI, and talking about the fact that his argument was it doesn't matter if a model is accurate or not if the underwriter ultimately can't follow its reasoning. And so I thought maybe we could start there and see if you had any thoughts and what struck you about that and what caused you to reach out.
I'd say that the model, it doesn't matter how accurate the model is if the underwriter doesn't want to use it, and if the claims adjuster doesn't want to use it, and if the auditor doesn't want to use it. So that is the issue that I see most frequently, not kind of the other issues. The issues around usage and resistance is the most fundamental obstacle for insurance companies adopting AI tools. I just did a leadership workshop for Citizens Florida, which is, of course, the insurance company of last resort for Florida. And they gave me a testimonial, so I can talk about my work for them. And the leadership workshop really focused on these issues, teaching the leaders how to use AI effectively and then how to adopt AI effectively in their teams. And the biggest issue that needs to be addressed is resistance to change, but not the typical resistance to technology that you think about. So thinking about the InsurTech podcast, obviously feature a lot of technology. And typical technology resistance to change is around people being hassled and lazy and not wanting to change their existing processes. It's a lot of work. They feel like they're up to their ears in their existing processes and they don't want to take the time to learn a new process and adopt it. Now, that's certainly there with AI, but it's really not that big a deal to learn AI because it's much easier to learn than other technology. You can literally ask it how to use it and adapt it to your workflows. So we can talk about that in depth. But the AI tools are much easier to learn than other technology. The biggest resistance to change is not the hassle. The biggest resistance to change is the emotions. And there are three big emotions that cause resistance to change. And I can talk about them, but I'll shut up now and see what you want to ask me.
Well, you kind of preempted my question, which is, is this the same or different than other types of technology and implementation? So maybe if you want to just continue down that front as to, what may be similar and what is different in this case.
Sure. So definitely something that's different is how much easier AI is to adopt than other technologies. It's using natural language programming, meaning you talk to it. And claims adjusters, underwriters, auditors, finance professionals, they can figure it out because they can talk to it. They can ask it how to do things. They can describe their workflows and they can adapt their workflows and choose to build AI tools. And I do a lot of that in my workshops for insurance companies. But that is the second part of it. First, before that, you need to overcome the challenges around emotions with AI. And if you don't overcome that, that's what my book, The Psychology of AI Adoption at Work from Resistance to Results, is all about. There are three big emotions that need to be overcome. One is anxiety, fear. You don't have that with, let's say, claims technology backend. So that is not something that is going to be technology that people fear. You're going to fear underwriting technology and so on, auditing technology. It's not something that people fear. But AI is really feared because of all the potential for job loss. And this is a serious issue. So we're already seeing junior people starting to be seriously impacted by AI. For people who are recently graduates, junior people, their job prospects are already dimmed by AI technology. And there was a recent letter signed by over 200 economists, including 16 Nobel laureates, saying that over the next several years, we'll face a lot of AI-caused job displacement. And that is just reinforcing a lot of what people hear in the news, real fears around real issues around job loss. And so people are very reluctant to use AI because they feel that they're training their own replacement. So that's one big emotion. Second big emotion is identity threat. Threat to their professional identity. So underwriters, claims adjusters, auditors, they're not afraid of claims technology that automates certain minor processes. That is quite useful, obviously, and important, but that's not the product technology they're afraid of. What claims adjusters are afraid of is the technology that writes the claims letter for them. They feel professionally tied. They're proud of their ability to write a good claims letter, and that's central to their professional identity. Same thing with underwriters for doing the right job and creating a good report on an insurance proposal. So same thing for auditors who are going to create a report. They feel proud of that. They feel tied to their professional identity. And these are things that AI is increasingly being able to replace. So that identity threat is a second huge issue. Third huge issue is shame. So shame is a major one. Right now, insurance companies, what tends to happen is that they roll out an AI tool and they give people just online education about how to use this AI tool. And so individuals start adopting it and they see how much it improves their productivity. And then but they don't want to talk about how much it improves their productivity to their colleagues. They don't want to talk about, oh, I wrote this email using an AI tool. I wrote this claims letter using an AI tool. I wrote this underwriting report using an AI tool. I wrote this auditing report using an AI tool. They don't want to talk about that. They feel ashamed, worried about being judged. So there's a lot of social stigma around using AI tools. So you have individual improvements, but team processes are seriously hampered. And of course, team processes are incredibly important for insurance companies where there's complex workflows that you hand off from one team member to another. So this is a pretty big issue, the shame around AI tool usage.
So I don't know, I have to say, I got to push back on that third one a little bit, because what environment is this shame? Because, I mean, maybe I'm a little more entrepreneurial, a little bit different situation, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe they're hiding it, but I don't know anyone. Now, maybe we're all a little scared of it. Maybe at times we're intimidated by it, but I don't know anyone that I have a regular dialogue with that doesn't feel like, it's empowering and provides tremendous leverage versus and trying to figure out how to take advantage of that leverage versus shame and using it.
So I hear you. When's the last time you talked how proud you were of using it to write your emails to colleagues, or using it to write your articles, or using it to write, your audio podcast updates? This is not stuff that people are personally, like in their individual use, they're using it. That's the point. But they're reluctant to talk about using it or writing your LinkedIn post. And so people are very reluctant to talk about their usage of AI. I find this in companies all the time. So people in teams are very reluctant to share with colleagues about using AI. They're certainly reluctant. They're even more reluctant to share with external stakeholders about their use of AI. And so this is a big, big issue within companies. It's not an issue for you as an individual entrepreneur, but even probably you would not necessarily openly talk about how you're writing all your emails using AI tools and how it's so effective for you, right? That's kind of something that people have social stigma about.
Yeah, again, I still push back a little bit, and I'm sure, for a lot of people you're right, but to me, it's a world about being able to give these tools as much context as possible, whether that's your personal context, whether it's your context, your business context, or something in between, and then enabling those tools to leverage that context, regardless of what the application is, producing a project.
In my book, I've done over 100 consulting projects, and I've had many thousands of survey responses and hundreds of focus groups where people talk about how they don't want to tell their colleagues that they're using AI. They're using it, but they don't want to tell their colleagues that they're using it. So not the case for you. Great. You might be like super free to tell everyone about your extensive AI usage. But within companies, there's serious social stigma around it, especially when people feel, tying it back to the previous issues I raised, that it will replace their jobs and that it will cause them to feel that serious threat to their professional identity. And so that is big topics that leaders spend a lot of time struggling with, because there's been extensive. So for example, a study from MIT showed that something like 95% of AI pilots don't show return on investment compared to the amount of money spent on implementing them. And it's because of human reluctance to use these tools and to talk about them and to collaborate on them that causes these problems. And it's these three big emotions that are blocking human usage.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think, a lot of people have seen that study. So I guess the question is, from a leader's point of view, is the issue to help people not feel that shame, to create a culture of supporting of the AI tools? Is it to use psychometric assessment and figure out the people who are capable of embracing the technology and build a different workforce for the future? Or what's the approach? We can start from the top down first, and then maybe think about it from the bottom after.
Yeah, so in my book, I identify 8 psychographic profiles based on the surveys and the focus group results. And one of the psychographic profiles, going back to the 3 big emotions, is the fear and anxiety around job loss. And so that is the AI alarmists. And in order to address their concerns, they need to be reassured that nobody will lose their job because the company is using AI. And if you could make that authentic statement, some insurance companies can, some insurance companies can't. So that I work with companies, and some companies that I work with, again, they definitely can make this statement. If not, that they can't. But all companies should be able to make the statement that, hey, the only people who would lose their jobs is people who don't learn how to use AI tools effectively. And so both of those statements are important for moving people in the AI alarmist camp to starting to use AI tools and getting them to actually use AI tools and learn how to use them effectively. So that's the AI alarmists. You need to have both elements. And in many companies, not all will be able to have the first, but all companies should be able to make a strong statement on the second. So that's the one category. Then you have the psychographic profile of pragmatic resistors. And so these pragmatic resistors are the ones who feel that strong identity threat. They're less concerned about job loss. They're concerned about that blow to their professional identity. And so what you need to work with pragmatic resistors on is highlighting the need to change their professional identity and what they're proud of. And their pride needs to be shifted from creating the product, from creating the underwriting report, creating the claims letter, creating the auditor investigation, and doing a really good job with that initial creation, to editing and evaluating. So AI tools can do 90% of the job for the initial creation of the claims letter and so on. They can do that. They can do the reports. They can do the initial pulling together, the investigation, analyzing it. But departments of insurance are strongly reluctant to let determinations be made by AI tools. And so that certainly is important. And also, the AI tools are not yet as accurate as would be as the better humans. And so the humans need to, both for the regulation purposes and for quality assurance purposes, humans need to make the decisions. And so the future skill, the skill of the future is not the initial generation. It's the editing and evaluating of that product to make sure that it is compliant with both regulations and the quality required for the insurance company to have the good outcome. So that is the skill of the future. So leaders need to work with their teams to shift their professional identities around what is the skill of the future, that editing and evaluation. So that is going to be with the identity threat. The third one, the shame, leaders need to model their AI usage. They need to talk about how they are using AI to draft their initial emails and then edit the emails themselves before they send it out or something like that. They need to talk about their AI usage extensively in all sorts of areas and how they are personally using AI and make it normative, make it normal. So make it something that everyone in the team can see, okay, my leader is using it, therefore I should be using it in this way. And so it's up to the leader in all three cases to shift the norms. On the first one, it's up to the executives. So the executive leadership needs to make those statements around AI usage, about the protection from job loss, and certainly the effective AI usage will prevent job problems. Now, in terms of the other two areas, that's going to be the middle managers. And so the executive leadership, that's the Citizens Florida workshop we talked about, you need to get your middle managers to address the identity threat and to address the sense of shame. And so middle managers need to be on top of those two areas.
All right. Well, a couple things. I guess one question I have is, how much of an issue is the fact that a lot of these projects, and I think even that MIT study you're referring to spoke to this, is the fact that some of these projects are sort of they're being done as projects, and they're not really being done as sort of part of a business strategy and target outcomes that leaders in an organization have identified, and then a real understanding of how the AI project can help move the organization toward that goal. How do those things balance out with these more psychological issues that you're talking about?
So I think the big challenge with AI adoption from the strategy of how leaders are adopting it is that they're rolling it out in a typical technology fashion. So I mentioned before that the way that they roll it out tends to be, hey, let's get licenses for everyone, and let's get training for everyone. That's like virtual training, online education, and then people will adopt it and use it. That tends to be the major way that I see insurance companies adopting AI tools, whether broad platforms like Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot. Lots of insurance companies, of course, are using Copilot because they're Microsoft shops, but other companies are using Claude because it's more effective. And so those are the two major tools that I've seen used in terms of broad platforms or specific insurtech products that integrate AI tools. Again, the same way they get a license and they roll out that broad education. And so then you get, that's sufficient in terms of previous technologies, but it doesn't address the emotions, the emotional components. So the strategy of the rollout doesn't work well. And then individual pilots that managers launch, what you're talking about here in terms of hey, here's a project that we're doing, we're going to experiment, we're going to figure it out. That's not a bad approach. So after overcoming the emotions, I've worked with a number of insurance companies that launched specific products. So for example, helping draft the initial claims letter, or pulling together the information for an underwriting report and making some initial recommendations, or same thing for auditing. And then standardizing that tool so that other people can use it. But if you don't overcome people's emotions, they'll be very reluctant to use it, and they will use it badly. And so that leads to some more research that was recently published in the Harvard Business Review around what's called AI work slop. So AI work slop, the finding is that it has caused people to rework for about 2 hours a month of rework of AI products, so AI output, costing $186 per employee. And that's another reason that links to the MIT study why AI projects have failed to show value. And so that work slop results from people who are especially the two categories that I mentioned first, the two big emotions, the fear and the identity threat, where people say, well, you want me to use an AI tool, fine, I'll just click the button, I won't evaluate the outcome, and I'll just send it onward the way it is. And so the tools are 90% of the way there, but they're not 100% of the way there. And so you have bad outcomes that are also have faced some regulatory threat if it's found out and if it's figured out that people aren't actually evaluating the outputs of these tools. So there's a special element that's important for insurance companies from the regulation perspective. You need to get people to evaluate and make the decision themselves, not just go automatically with what the AI tool recommends. And so the AI work slop is more serious for insurance companies than it is for others. And that's why there are the two issues that cause that problems for insurance companies. So both the quality of the product and the regulatory aspect of things are undermined if you don't address people's emotions in advance.
So how much is an element of this, of that piece of educating people that these, and obviously, you know, the MIT study was focused on generative AI and conversational AI, and not on the other types of AI that we're not even talking about really in this conversation. Sure. But how much of this is about educating people that, you know, these tools are not deterministic, and you know, you actually have to think, and it's not like, maybe, I don't know if Google's the best example, but you put it in, you know, a search and you get an answer and you accept that answer. How much of that is an element too?
Yes, so that's the second part of things. You need to, after you get over the people's emotions, you need to educate them. But you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The education is the leading of the horse to water. That's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So you need to make sure that people are motivated to drink. If people are not motivated to understand something, they will not understand it. They will not use it well, and they will use it badly, and they'll create AI work slop. And I've seen this in insurance companies, and it's definitely a challenge, especially not simply the compliance element, but more dangerously is the regulation element. So this is definitely something that if you don't motivate people to use AI tools effectively, the education will not help. People will be using them badly, and they will create, even if they use them at all, they'll use them badly. And once they create work slop and people are saying, oh, you created this sloppy out, and they're like, well, I just did what you told me to. I use this AI tool. You know, it's the AI tool. It's not me. I'm just not going to use it anymore. I'm going to go back to my old ways. And there you go. That's how the AI project adoption fails. That's how the pilots fail to show value. So that is the big issue. Education is not enough. If you don't address people's emotions, it will go in one ear and out the other.
So I wanted to loop back to something you said before regarding like the role of middle managers in rolling these things out, because it seems to me, and I've had this conversation with some others, that middle managers, if anything, seem like the folks most at risk in this transformation, because, you know, if they're not, for whatever reason, part of the leadership group and helping to you know, develop the target business outcomes and develop the strategy for the business, and on the other end, they're not necessarily the ones who've been hands-on doing the work, and they're more used to sort of monitoring dashboards and filing reports and doing things like that. Those are some of the tasks that AI, whether it's generative AI and LLMs, or whether it's other types of tools, can most easily replace a lot of what they're doing today.
So what I tend to see is that middle managers, they certainly can be replaced if they don't learn how to use AI tools effectively. The future is going to be individual employees who are managers of agents. These are the people who learn how to use AI tools successfully. Insurance companies I work with, once we finish the project, what happens is that each individual employee has a suite of agents that they use for ensuring that they get their outcomes met. But what the manager does is he or she connects the team together and makes sure the agents play well with each other. So managers, how they need to work is they need to be managers of supervisors, essentially. That's their future role. So each individual person is a supervisor of agents, and managers of the future are going to be supervisors of the supervisors. So they're not going to be like the lowest level. They're going to be the next level up. And so the leadership is going to just be doing the strategy. Managers are going to be supervising supervisors. And those are the skills that middle managers need to learn. So that is part of the new skill set of middle managers that they need to acquire. So the middle managers who don't acquire that skill set, that means that they're not using AI tools effectively, because they need to not only have individual productivity, they need to make sure their teams are productive. And that's the big obstacle right now that's caused by shame, especially, but also, of course, the anxiety around job loss and the identity threat. And so middle managers need to address those challenges, and then their numbers are going to be great, and they will have learned the skills of supervising supervisors of agents. So middle managers who learn those skills, they're going to be the successful ones in the future. And the ones who don't, these are not necessarily easy skills to learn. The ones who don't are not going to be successful in the future.
So obviously there's a cost to the technology itself, and then what you're talking about, there's a lot of costs to the people management side of this. So in your consulting work, how do you balance this? Like, are you typically advising companies that they need to bring in some fresh talent from the outside? Are you suggesting they go through an evaluation process to understand who in the organization is capable of stepping up? And how should they think about the budgeting for these projects? Because they may be thinking about the pure technology costs and the implementation costs, and even maybe the training costs, but not necessarily the complete human costs of getting an organization up to speed to fully leverage the technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So I think this is going to be the challenge of the future for leaders, and that's what I was addressing in the workshop that I was mentioning did, and other workshops for insurance companies. How do you make good decisions around the long-term strategy of where you want to be in the next couple of years? And so what you want to do is picture that future. The future is going to be each individual employee is going to be a manager of agents. Middle managers are going to be supervisors of supervisors. So each individual employee is going to be a supervisor. And each individual middle manager is going to be a manager of supervisors. And so for that future, what do you need to do to transform your organization into that future? You don't necessarily need to look for outsiders. There are going to be people inside your company who are definitely going to be capable of that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is going to be capable. So you want to essentially filter who is going to be able to learn how to use AI effectively. And again, the job guarantee protection should be only for people who are going to be learned how to use AI effectively. And certainly their job should be secure. That includes managers as well as people in claims, underwriting, auditing, or other roles, finance. And then you will typically find that you will have just because the agents, the AI agents, are saving you so much time, you will find that you will have plenty of staff internally who are able to do this. That doesn't, not necessarily for every insurance company. There might be some smaller insurance companies for this, which this doesn't apply, but the large majority of insurance companies should have plenty of internal staff to do it. And of course, you're right, you need to budget appropriately time, implementation, transition, workforce transition, because I do see that some people, no matter what you do, they're not going to be willing to learn how to use AI tools effectively. And so some portion of the workforce will be left behind, but that's just the reality of the situation. But you definitely can motivate and engage and encourage your current workforce to be that workforce of the future, because honestly, in the future, you'll need quite a bit smaller workforce than you do right now, just because AI is going to be taking on so many more tasks.
So how do you ultimately know if the process is working? If there are a lot of these pilots and other programs that don't show a real return in the short run, is it possible to implement and get a return in the short run, or do you need to be thinking about this in a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year horizon instead? Because it seems like we could be in a totally different world 3 years from now, let alone 5.
Yeah, so I recommend, for what tends to work is having each department, so claims, underwriting, auditing, finance, launch their own pilot project of AI champions. You'll find plenty of people in each department, at least if you have something like 20-ish people at least on staff. You'll have plenty of people so at least in one department, but more if you're a larger insurance company. You'll have plenty of people who are going to be interested in being part of the future, in being part of that future workforce. And so they will need to tag team with the IT department on figuring out how to best implement AI in claims, how to best implement AI in underwriting and auditing. Claims, by the way, I've found from all my work, is the easiest area in which to start the process, just because there's a lot of intelligence that can be applied in the claims process. So for example, if a claim comes in, rather than digging through like 80 insurance forms and trying to figure out what the coverage is, you just have an AI tool do the initial coverage, and then it can make a determination. And then the claims adjuster can decide if that's the right determination. Then the next step, of course, is writing the claims that are based on the determination. AI tool is great at that. So it's quite easy to implement once you know what you're doing. Claims department, underwriting takes a little bit more effort, but it's definitely doable. Same thing for auditing, same thing for like inspection. Like the easiest inspection tool is someone goes into a house to inspect it, and they record their thoughts into from their phone. They send it back to HQ. By the time they return back, the report is already, initial draft of the report is written up. Great, like that survey, that saves so much time. So there's a lot of initiatives that you can have that would be very short-term effective. You just need to get people who are excited and motivated to use AI tools, for whom the three emotions that I described earlier have been overcome. And then once you overcome those emotions and give them some training, it's quite easy to get short-term returns. The reason people haven't been getting short-term returns is they haven't been focusing on the emotions.
All right, Dr. Gleb, appreciate having you on. Is there anything, there's so many more topics we could dig into, but we're limited on time. But is there anything in particular we haven't covered today that you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I think this has been good. I think what insurance leaders need to really think about and realize is that this is different than typical technology adoption. This is not just about the hassle of change management that they are used to. It's about the three big emotions I talked about before: the fear and anxiety around job loss, the serious threat to professional and creative identity, and the shame of talking about and opening up about AI usage that inhibits team collaboration.
All right, great. Well, I think these are really interesting points, a lot of which has not been discussed publicly. And certainly looking forward to the release of your book, which digs into this further, and that is The Psychology of AI Adoption at Work, which is coming out from Georgetown University Press in September. So Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, thanks so much for joining me on the InsurTech Leadership Podcast.
It was a pleasure, Josh. Thank you so much for inviting me.